All right. Welcome to the KFS Postgame Show presented by BetUS. I'm DJ Zullo. It's become kind of a pattern now doing the post games after a blowout loss against a big time team on national TV. Listen, let's have a little fun with this. I mean, it is what it is. It was brutal. It was brutal from the start. It had all the indications that it was going to be one of those nights where Cleveland was going to hit every shot. And you saw early the Knicks sort of make some tougher buckets. It quickly became a layup, dunk, 3-point fest versus a bunch of like tough twos for the Knicks. That pattern basically persisted throughout the entire game, and the Knicks never really were in the game. Briefly to start, but it was a blowout from the start, and that's how it finished. And listen, I hate doing it because I did it after the Boston game, the last Boston game where the Knicks got shellacked, but I have to do it again, and I can't get away from it because it has to be the theme. This is now Knicks have played 6 games against the Celtics, the Thunder, and the Cavaliers. 6 games. The average score, if my math is correct, is 126 to 105. The average score, and that's 2 relatively close games in there. Cleveland the first time, and Oklahoma City the first time. Other than that, it's been blowout city every single time. And again, this was billed, and the Knicks were projected to be in the mix, maybe not quite on the tier of the elite teams, but no one predicted the gap was going to be this big. And listen, I'm going to just get out ahead of it. I know one of the major themes is going to be Precious Achiuwa. I am going to be very I'm going to honor that frustration because listen, I understood starting him. Knicks are going to have a hard time defending and rebounding without Josh Hart if Achiuwa is not in the game, at least theoretically. And I understood the coach going to Achiuwa to start the game. But how often did the Knicks create an advantage only to have the ball end up in the hands of Achiuwa behind the 3-point line, many times above the break, in which he's just going to just hand the ball back to someone else, and then the advantage dissolves and the possession is over. We saw that time and time again. I thought it was crazy he started the third quarter. I'm just going to be honest. In most cases, I have agreed and I've understood and I've defended the coaching decisions here. Starting Achiuwa in the third quarter after what we saw in the first 2 quarters, to me, was asinine. It wasn't like he was helping you on defense. They gave up 150 points per 100 possessions in the first half. So it wasn't like you can lean on the fact that Achiuwa was, keeping your defense at a decent level. And we know the offense is just a major problem when he's on the floor. So if you're going to scream and yell that the coach shouldn't have started him or he should have played him less and he shouldn't have started him in the second half, I'm with you on a lot of that, especially the second half, because we all knew what the outcome was going to be. Cavs are going to load up off him. It was making the Karl-Anthony Towns post-ups extremely tough. Despite that, he was able to actually convert a lot of those. But you saw Jared Allen when he was in the game lurking in the paint. So Towns had to go to that righty jump hook. He had to stay just outside the paint, made things a little bit tougher. To his credit, he made a lot of those shots, but the process to get to him is not a sustainable process. Achiuwa makes that much more difficult. And I don't understand why we can't just be a little more flexible with the lineup choices against certain teams. There's plenty of teams where Achiuwa can play the 4. With OG playing and with the offensive firepower the Knicks have, and you can get away with it. But against these great teams, you just can't, especially at the minutes level that he's playing in. But putting that aside for a moment here, because I also want to just acknowledge the fact that there are so many problems the Knicks have against these elite teams that focusing on the Achiuwa issue, to me, is disregarding all the other problems that are much more deep and alarming. Because Precious Achiuwa, when Josh Hart's healthy and Mitchell Robinson is healthy, is your ninth man. Maybe he's not even in your playoff rotation. As I tweeted earlier, if the problem was only Precious Achiuwa, that would be an amazing outcome for the Knicks, because it's an easy fix once you get some healthy bodies in there. But he's not the only issue. And he's not even close to being the most impactful issue. I don't know if this is a talent player for player issue against these elite teams. In fact, I don't think that is the major issue here. The major issue is that you can see these teams defend, and there's maybe holes here and there. There's things you can pick at, especially Cleveland, who is not a great defensive team. Like, you can go into their matchups and you can basically check off 3 or 4 players that in their rotation that you can attack in ways that is going to generate good offense for you. Much less so for Oklahoma City and Boston, but for Cleveland especially, there are holes there. But when you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, now DeAndre Hunter in your rotation, Dean Wade can defend. I think Max Strus has always been an underrated defender. Positionally strong, good size. The holes they have are pretty limited. Boston, Oklahoma City, they don't have defensive holes. But how many holes right now do the Knicks have on the defensive end? And I just think that is that's been the season-long issue. I know offensively there are struggles, and it is eye-opening sometimes, the amount of work the Knicks have to do to generate good looks against these great teams. But I don't think the offense rises to the level of concern to match where the defense is right now. Cleveland they space you out, but they space you out and then they weaponize that space with the best cutting process in the entire NBA. Just elite cutting off the ball. It's probably the of all the coaching additions this year, of all the things coaches have added to their team, that aspect, along with the empowering of Evan Mobley, that part that Kenny Atkinson has brought to the Cavaliers has changed their offense. So it's not just that they're many times either a 5-out or 4-1-in look. It's the cutting and the ball movement out of that makes them so tough to guard. And then when you are able to sort of not allow that to collapse your defense, you have 2 elite ball handlers, playmakers in Garland and Mitchell. And time again, when they would run Garland, and whether it was Mobley or Allen in pick and roll action, they would purposefully and surgically really test the low man or tag ability of the Knicks based on the player movement. Often they would make it challenging for the Knicks even to know who had the tag responsibility. And that allowed just free runs to the rim. I mean, I lost count eventually, but it was like several occasions where Mobley had a free run to the rim, unencumbered, no tag, no one trying to bump him off, and Garland is as good as it gets, getting the ball up high for a finish. And it was the Knicks pick and roll defense that they were able to exploit, whether it was, Cat in a drop early, got burned by a Mitchell pull-up 3, got beat by Mitchell getting into the lane for a floater where Cat again had his hands down, not ready to contest. One of those areas that Mitchell Robinson is as good in the NBA as any player, defending and guarding and contesting that floater. So hope and pray Mitch is back soon just to sort of clean a little bit of that up, playing in his drop. But cat and drop wasn't the answer. And then when the Knicks would come up and they would show or hedge, be a little more aggressive, that's when the Mobley would free run to the rim and all the movement around. So you didn't know who was tagging. Anunoby, who usually is really like aware about his responsibility to be that final layer of tag responsibility there, wasn't either didn't know it was his responsibility or just didn't have the, at that point, he had been, obviously he hasn't played in a while. So maybe it was one of those where physically he just couldn't get to the spot. But the issue the Knicks have, and there is going to be in my opinion, a season-long problem here, is that there's just too many holes on the defensive end. When you stack them up against these great teams that are not only good on the defensive end, but offensively can really test you, it makes it really hard to imagine the Knicks figuring out a way with a healthy Mitchell Robinson, with the OG Anunoby, like being back to his usual self. Like, how do they muster up a defense that doesn't hemorrhage points in multiple areas, that doesn't have like consistently 2 to 3 guys on the defensive end that you can target? So I don't know where they go from here in terms of trying to figure out a way to generate a top 10-ish defense. I think I read the other day, 9 of the last 11 NBA champions have been at least a top 10 defense. I think Denver is one of the teams that was just outside, but they were just outside top 10, maybe 12 or 13. But it didn't seem to me, at least, that they had the amount of holes and areas that you can poke at compared to the Knicks. Denver had like really good positional size. And their defensive rebounding and the fact that Jokic has always been, at least on the impact side, better than maybe the narrative. But it was stark and alarming how quickly you could watch this game and just say to yourself, yeah, the Knicks don't have an answer for them. And I know the Cavaliers made shots at a rate that you likely wouldn't see on an average basis. But how many times this year have we said that, right? How many times have we said a team the Knicks have played has shot an incredible percentage, and wow, they're just having the worst shooting luck against in terms of like the Knicks defense. But maybe the Knicks defense is playing at a level that is going to produce outcomes for the opponent at a level that we would assume to be something out of the ordinary. But maybe they're just that comfortable. Maybe they can get into their actions that easily. I do want to wait to see what the Mitchell Robinson, healthy OG Anunoby version of this defense can be. But I would lie to you. I'd be lying if I said to you I was confident that would be the answer to push this team in an area defensively where I would be confident that this could be a championship level defense. And the offense, by the way, it's still a great offense, but it has not been a great offense against these teams that we're talking about. So they could be a great offense against, and this is the conversation after the Boston game. They could be a great offense against 90% of the league, but against the 3 or 4 teams that we've all talked about, their issues become apparent in terms of like, and we'll transition to the offense now. It's probably, we saw Brunson make a bunch of tough contested shots early on. And then you saw the Cavaliers, and this is where their defensive versatility comes in, start to just switch Mobley onto Brunson And Brunson got him on a couple, fouls, and I think he may have scored one or two, but it slowed the Knicks offense down. But the idea is the Knicks had to work for that. Those Towns post-ups that generated like high quality offense, that's like not an easy brand of offense to play in 2025. Like, you're not going to be able to post Karl-Anthony Towns your way into 120 points on a night. You got to get it from other areas. And that's where the offensive concerns come in. Is like, all right, you're great offense against most teams, but against these great teams, it's the same question. What is the avenue to be a great offense? Because if you're not going to be a great defense, we know that's sort of like that ship has sailed. Like, maybe you could be an average defense, but if you're going to be an average defense, you have to be a great offense to be a true blue contender. And that's where we are left with what is the ceiling truly of this team. If we can all agree the defense is a major, major problem right now, not just against the great teams. It's a problem against most teams in the NBA. And the offense against these great teams is just not playing well enough. You don't get the Karl-Anthony Towns driving all over the place like he's able to do against the Bulls. You don't get Jalen Brunson just scoring at a level that is commensurate with like elite heliocentric offense. Like, he can score against these great teams, but is that a recipe for overall great offense for a team? Maybe on a night or two, but in a playoff series, like, you can't play that way. That means you need more from someone else. And, he got a lot of praise because of his defensive performance late on that last second play at the end of regulation. But Mikal Bridges, like, they need more of him against these great teams. He's been pretty mediocre against them on a whole. Rarely on the offensive end. On the defensive end, like, I think he's been good. I don't have a major issue with what he's brought defensively against most of these teams, the Boston Tatum issue aside. But against these teams, like, you need more of him on the offensive end. And, the free throw issue, the problem against everyone, but it's completely exasperated against these other teams, against these great teams, because he just is not able to get rim pressure. And the shot making, when he has it going, and he got it going a little bit in the third quarter when the game was already decided, but the shot making just, it's a lot of semi-contested, fall away, mid-range jump shooting. And on Christmas Day, when it's going beautifully and he's got the 3-point shot to supplement, and, he can have a huge night. But these great teams are not going to allow him to just have that comfort level mid-range shooting where he has the rhythm. They're going to physically move him just enough outside that range to the point where he'll get his points, but it's not nearly at a level where you would admit that was like high efficient offense. Now in the playoffs, you're going to need that. So that is a skill that is the Knicks are going to have to lean on a little bit. But in these regular season games, I would have liked to see Mikal Bridges sort of put his stamp on the game a little more on the offensive end. And that has just not been the case. So that is the bar is set pretty high for him. I have no issue right now with what they traded for him. I think the trade is fine. We all know the narrative. It's an overpay. Yes, but I'm happy to have him on my team. But I can also like critique his performance against these elite teams because you just need more of him. Because the game is just too hard right now for Brunson and Towns. And that's where the offense sort of is struggling to get close to the ceiling we know they have, is that the way Brunson and Towns are having to get their offense against these great defenses is just too hard for there not to be another 2 or 3 guys coming to the party. And that's where the lack of depth comes in, because Deuce McBride, he has many amazing qualities as a offensive player, but ball in his hands and trying to make a play and trying to create offense, not his game. OG Anunoby, same thing. These are spot up shooters that can do damage in transition in different ways. McBride with the shooting, Anunoby with the finishing. But when the game sort of becomes bogged down in the half court, looking ahead to the playoffs, like there's gonna, like I don't have a lot of confidence that those guys are what's gonna be, they can bring that. So that to me is another area where we have to look at over at the construction of this team and wonder, is there enough on the offensive end if Brunson and Towns are going to struggle to get to like their normal averages on a night-to-night basis, because it's the game, the scoring doesn't come as easy against these teams. And when Brunson and Towns were scoring tonight, it just didn't seem to be a sustainable brand of offense that, even if they were playing well on defense, was going to be enough. But that is the issue in terms of like where they are in the team construction, in some of the talent areas. But the other piece of this, and the last thing before we move on to your super chats, is, I said before the year that this was the most important coaching year of Tom Thibodeau's career. And while I would say on February the 21st, 2025, like he's done a good job this year. I think he's done, if I graded it, like he's a B or B plus, like a very good job this year. But this front office is going to have to make a determination, and it might not be after this season. And, maybe the Knicks get to a point where it's not even a question. They figure things out and they have a great run in the playoffs and it's a moot point. But if this trend continues, that there is just a massive chasm between where the Knicks are and where these elite teams are, then the front office has to decide, like, is this an us issue or is it a coaching issue? And what I mean by is it an us issue, like, did we not do a good enough job of getting the right mix of players? But if we think we did, then we have to make a determination on like whether or not the coach is the one to get us to that level. And we are holding, even though the window of this team is not just this year, it's a 2 to 3 year window to try to figure this out. Everyone basically, but Jalen Brunson, is being evaluated in a way that needs to be, the magnifying glass has to be right on them, every single piece of this team, because 2 to 3 year window, like that evaporates quick. Before you know it, we're going to be a year before some really tough decisions are going to have to be made. Like, yes, the window is longer than this year, but we also need to hold everyone extremely accountable for what this season is going to be. And again, this could flip, and this team could be the team that is a true blue contender. They can go out against Boston on Sunday and have a great showing and win that game, and the narrative turns on his head. But if we continue, and we've played now 6 games, again, 6 games against Oklahoma City, Boston, Cleveland, average score 126 to 105. If that trend continues and the Knicks don't have a strong effort in the second round against Boston, then everyone, again, other than Jalen Brunson, is going to have to be, put to the test. And you have to figure out if this is the group from the coach on down that is going to be the championship roster. And like I said, I think the coach has done a really good job this year in a lot of ways. But you can't go out against these great teams and not compete and not look like you belong on the same floor as them. And that's the part that I think is alarming and concerning and something that the team has to reckon with. And then also like decide quickly here, because it's not a full 2 days that you're getting off here. Decide quickly if you're going to have a little pride and figure out a way to compete on Sunday and try to get a win. Because you were just getting embarrassed game after game against these great teams. Tonight was an embarrassment across the board. And that's why it's not just on Precious Achiuwa. It's not just on the decision to play him. It's such a complex suite of problems that it's foolish to just focus on one. But the Knicks are going to have to figure out a way to flip this. And I guess it starts Sunday. And we'll see, because Sunday will be, not just a test of the talent, but a test of the character. Because that's the thing I started to think about in the third quarter when the game was over. Like, what team is going to show up on Sunday? Another national TV game. Like, can you really go out there and lose by 25, 30 points again to the Celtics team? Or will you have a little pride and just show up in a way and not allow yourself to be embarrassed again? Because I'm frankly tired of watching the team I root for get embarrassed night after night against teams that we should be competing with. Anyway, it's still a lot of season left. Starting with Boston on 1:00 on Sunday, but vibes aren't good. But let's get to your super chats. I know we have a bunch that came in during the game, probably when the game was already decided. So we'll get some. We'll honor those and take those, and then we'll move on to some of the ones that came in after the game ended. But Kev, you want to fire off the first one? Kev at the ones and twos. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Second blowout loss that we've done together. So kind of hanging out together doing this. All right. Guy Huber, then. I hope I'm not butchering that. Does our coach have no Shamet stinks that he is not a wing? What have I done to deserve this punishment? Yeah, I mean, Shamet's been terrible. I mean, I can't disagree with you. Earlier in the year, there were some like defensive things that he was doing that you like to see. Showed some grit, showed some fight, but he can't make shots. And I think it goes to show some of the depth issues, because there was a reason why Landry Shamet was like not signed by anyone. If you look at other than, you get past McBride, I mean, you have a lot of guys, Campaign, Achiuwa, Shamet, guys in your rotation that were not like sought after commodities in the NBA. And the Knicks are relying on these players to play real minutes for them. So I do have, a little sympathy for the head coach, because if you're not going to play Achiuwa, like Yeah, you could just play deuce 40 minutes a night. You could, sure. And where are you going then? I mean, how many minutes is like reasonable for Achiuwa? Is 15? Is 20? Like, what is the number? But to your point, Shamit, if he's not gonna actually shoot and make shots, he could fight all he wants on the defensive end, but he's not going to be a good NBA player at that point. So the shot just doesn't seem like it's going to come around. I don't know if it's a shoulder. He didn't shoot the ball well last year. It really hasn't been. I think maybe other than his like first couple of seasons in NBA, like he's never been like a great shooter. It's almost like his reputation as, extended past like his actual production as a shooter, especially again the last couple of years. But where do you go? Like you need to figure out a way to get 10, 12 minutes from him. And I'm sure he does things in terms of just like he keeps the ball moving. He's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He doesn't absolutely kill you on the defensive end. So I understand that he does like some baseline things, doesn't make a ton of mistakes that you would maybe see from like one of the rookies. So I understand that, but I'm with you. He is just not a good player. And as for a wing, like completely undersized for that. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And for kicking us off. It's quiet. How are you? Thanks for hanging out with us. We weren't catching these level of ass whoopings last year. Even when the team was hurt, games were still competitive. What gives? Yeah, that's a good question. I think it probably is just a defensive problem where the team is just, the team last year was good enough defensively that they just were able to stay in games, stay within striking distance, stay connected. Where this team, I feel like these outcomes are sort of baked in within the first 10 minutes of the game. And they rarely are able to kind of flip it and try to rebound from that. And I think it just is maybe it's a little grittiness factor where, Hartenstein and DiVincenzo, they had a level of almost a defiance that even when they were down early or when the team would make a bunch of shots early, there would be an awareness just to keep pushing. But that was like in their DNA. And you traded that for higher, or you didn't trade Hartenstein. I know you let him go. You brought in Towns. You have all these other more skilled players, and you figure that that's the worthwhile trade-off. And I think that is a better trade-off. The Knicks are better off with this group than the team that was a little more gritty, maybe were able to stay connected to some of these elite teams at a more, regular basis. But I still would prefer this group, but I'm not going to lie and say it's not frustrating, the fact that this team seems to let go of the rope a little more often. And that is, maybe they just realize early they just don't have the answers. And in watching it, it does feel like sometimes as a defense, they just don't have the answers. And I'm sure that has to seep into your psyche a little bit. And there were plenty of times in this game in the first half where, Cleveland was just getting whatever they wanted. 7 dunks in the first quarter. I mean, when does that happen? And I don't remember a team getting 7 dunks in a quarter at all. I mean, to start the game and give up 7 dunks, 9 of 11 from the rim in a variety of ways, transition, half court cuts, lobs out of the pick and roll action. I mean, there's just so many ways the Cavaliers are just able to get these free runs to the rim. It was, again, just word embarrassing just keeps coming to mind. I hate to keep repeating it, but it was just, it felt, I was embarrassed for them. And I imagine if that was an emotion they were feeling playing the game, that it would, maybe cause them to, pack it in a little early. But it's not fun to watch. And I think that the team Sunday needs to show a little pride against the Celtics. I'll just say that. Thank you, Esquire. Really appreciate it. Hush Z, these top teams don't respect us like they used to. Listen, 126 to 105 average score. Would you respect the Knicks? They can just get to their actions so easily. And, there's been games in the past against these teams where the games were more competitive because the Knicks would take them out of their comfort zone. Clearly, the Knicks aren't able to do that on the defensive end, and because their offense it's just the weirdest offense in the league, because you get such a dichotomy from what they can do against the vast majority of the league, and then what they are basically unable to do against these teams. Like, I've watched it enough and analyzed it enough to know, like, sort of what the issues are. And I said this after the Boston game. The big issue is, like, I don't know where the solutions are to just be a dominant offense or a great offense against these teams. But again, the offense, a problem, but the defense is like where everything sort of stems from, in terms of like pushing this team to an area that is more in line with being a real contender, or just pushing them completely out of the mix to the point where you can't even, like, talking about them right now in the same breath as Boston and Cleveland feels disingenuous, but the record is good enough to where I think you can get away with it. But we are teetering on the edge, and we may have already gotten there, but if we're not there, we're so close to getting to the point where discussing the Knicks amongst those two teams in the top two teams in the East is insanity. So that's just the reality of the situation that we're dealing with right now. And to your point, Hush Z, the teams are playing like they don't respect the Knicks. So I would agree with you there. Thank you so much for hanging out and participating. Don't bother me. I'm busy. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you checking in. I blame Precious when fandom gets in the way of logic. Yeah, listen, I mean, I know you're being a little facetious here, tongue in cheek, but I really just hope Precious is not getting, and I'm not on Twitter right now. I'm sure he's getting flamed, and I'm hoping it's at least sort of the anger is pushed more towards the coach for putting him in the position he's in or was in. Because look, I think the guy's a really good defensive player. He's actually made strides on offense in some ways. He could do more with the ball this year than he could last year. But the moments when he is put in a position to make a play and he just either throws up an air ball, turns it over, or just quickly passes it off to someone, or his mere presence is making it so much tougher for the other offensive players. It really puts a spotlight on some of these issues. And, in a perfect world, he's like your 9th or 10th best player, play spot, sparingly. But he's right now he's kind of needed to play some. Now the question is how much, and I think that's where the coach sort of lost the rope a little bit. Playing him in the starting him in the third quarter, I thought was a flat out mistake. But he is needed right now, because just do the math. Like, where are you going if you're just playing him 10 minutes a night? It's just really hard. And you saw some of the issues with McBride guarding Mitchell. You saw issues with DeAndre Hunter guarded by whomever was guarding him, just shooting over the top. So like, there's issues either way, and there's trade-offs either way. And I think there's maybe a lack of acknowledgement of the trade-offs. Like, if you're just not going to play Precious, you're going to play him 10 minutes a night. Like, what are the unintended consequences there? I think those have to be acknowledged and talked about. I'm sure the coach, who is a smart NBA head coach, like one of the most prepared, like he knows a lot about basketball. I know a lot of you listening, watching don't believe that, but he's a really smart head coach. I'm sure he's done all the theoretical sort of rotations, and maybe he just values things that he shouldn't be valuing as much. And I think that is a fair critique, and that is the reason why I thought just playing him to start that third didn't make any sense. But I also acknowledge, like, he doesn't have like a lot of options here. He's got Landry Shamet and Campaign, and there's just not a lot for him to go to right now, especially with Hart out, and Obi just didn't look great. Actually went down at one point, held his foot, stayed in the game. So I don't think it looked serious, but did grab at that injured right foot. So he just doesn't have a lot of options in terms of quality NBA players right now. And I think that's a big thing to acknowledge as well. Thank you, Busy. OG team, thank you so much. If Mitch is unable to make a difference defensively next to Cat, are we sure Cat should be here long term? Yeah, I'm not ready to make the determination or even have the discussion about Cat long term. Now, this is a true statement. Cat has never anchored a great defense playing the five. So putting that on the table, and then to your point, OG team, about Mitch, if he's unable to make a difference next to Cat, it's fair to wonder like what this is going to look like, because if we're saying Cat has never anchored a great defense at the five, and the defense has just not been, it's been bad this year, and he's played the five, and Mitch coming back, if he's unable, if they're going to try the Mitch Cat pairing to see how that works, and that maybe that doesn't have the desired effect, then that would be a major problem. That would be a bad outcome for everyone if that happened, because the Mitch Towns, pairing, it's interesting because you saw in Minnesota how that was able to work defensively. Now, I know Mitch is not Rudy Gobert. Even Mitch, when he was playing at a great high all NBA level defensively last year before he was hurt, was no Rudy Gobert. So how close can you emulate that? That is a big question here, but it's just true that Cat has never been a part of a great defense playing a full-time five. So that is where we have to wonder about the Mitch piece of this. And then again, trade-offs, unintended consequences. Like, what are we giving up if we do that? Well, you're probably giving up, those Cat drives, which have been like a huge source of offense, like those become tougher. Those become more, you know, just tougher to generate because there's just going to be an easier time either to have the rim protection loaded up or gap help. And you saw that tonight, actually, where, some of those cat drives, the Cavs were just sitting in those driving lanes, able to knock the ball loose a couple of times. And Cat, for his effectiveness as a driver, when he puts the ball on a second time on the ground, that ball, he's going to the rim. When he puts it down once, he might kick it out, but if it's down a second time, he's going to the rim. And teams are sitting on that, and they're able to, if they're within proximity, despite some really high level like pickups, and he can tuck it, he can pick it up over his head, like he's got like guard skills to avoid that dig. But there's just times where they can get their hands in there, and the presence of a full-time five along with him would make that an easier proposition for a defense. Now, Mitch, can he provide that off-ball screening that Gobert was able to utilize to generate Cat some more threes, potentially? But I do want to see it, and then it'll be curious to see how that potentially improves the defense. We'll see. Thank you, OG team. All right. Dead Ward 604. Yuck. Yeah. Not what you want to see. I think they were down by 39 points. Was that did he get to the 40s? I don't know. There was one point it was 39 because I had to watch on the ESPN broadcast, and they said that was the largest second half deficit, I think, since Fizdale's last season. I mean, talk about it, an embarrassing moment to get down 39 points. Really, really bad. And I do hope, and I have some belief that they were able to figure out a way to, put together an effort on Sunday that would allow them to just compete. And again, that's setting the bar really low. Like, I'm not even asking for a win. Like, can you figure out some solutions to slow that offense down in Boston and figure out a way to stay in the game? Make it a game in the fourth quarter and try to build your confidence you can play on the same floor as these teams, because right now you can't. All right, well, let's take a quick break, catch our breaths, and tell you about BetUS. Did you know BetUS also has a casino? For all my followers who like slots or live casino dealers, take advantage of BetUS's amazing sign-up bonus of 200% and a sign-up bonus up to $5,000, or 250% for crypto sign-up bonus up to $5,000. Get ready for a rush with BetUS Casino. Generous promotions and tournaments make every play even more rewarding. Sign up now and experience the difference. And as always, use promo code YouTube150 to receive a 150% bonus on your first deposit, as well as a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. Remember, gambling involves risk. Please only gamble with funds that you can afford to lose. All forms of betting carry financial risk, and it is down to the individual to make bets with or without the assistance of information provided. I hope, as a way to sort of deaden the blow, that some of you, want some cash today. Maybe took the Cavs over, maybe took the Knicks under, try to hedge your bet a little bit on a Knicks loss. We'll see. All right, what do we have next? We have three coming in from Iceman Sham. Here's the first one. Only good sign from this game, I guess, is Cat being able to get loose in his post-up opportunities. Yeah, that was a good sign. And he's been better over the last several games. His jump hook percentage, I looked at it a couple days ago, was at like 55%, which is close to his career number. It's probably close to like 58%. this year, really good getting to it on the right block, going over his left shoulder. He's just been better, more decisive, getting better positioning. Knicks have done a good job of punishing those mismatches. He had one against Strus, down on the left block, a little and one. Cavs were sending help from the bottom or the baseline. Allen sort of came initially and then backed off because I think Achiuwa was in the dunker spot, worried about the drop off pass. And then Towns showed really good patience to sort of step through Strus, get to the front of the rim or the side of the rim for an and one. So he's just been better, more decisive. I feel like it started in the Houston game at the Garden, where they had Amen Thompson on him a few times and he just walked him under the rim. It's got to be a counter for the Knicks. It's got to be something they can go to, especially in the playoffs, and get like good quality offense. The points per possession at a post-ups is it's hard to be at a level that you can go to more than 5 to 6 possessions in a game, but those 5 to 6 possessions where Towns is getting like pretty efficient looks matter. And in a close playoff game, there's going to be times where that's the best source of offense. And it's encouraging, to your point, Iceman Sham, that he was able to put together another good night, showing his skill as a post player, because he needs to have that in his bag to counter some of these switching defenses, which you would imagine would be just even more prevalent heading into the playoffs and in the playoffs. Thank you, Iceman Sham. I know you got a couple more coming in. Next one, and sheesh, the lack of size off the bench. DeAndre Hunter was licking his chops. Yeah, there was a few moments where it was wild how easy it was for him to rise up and have a clean look at the rim. Now you can counter that point by saying, yeah, but a DeAndre Hunter semi-contested mid-range shot, despite the height of the defender, is still a better outcome than what the Cavaliers were generating outside of that. Now, I would agree with you, but if you just look at this from the Cleveland perspective, if you're going to have Mitchell or Garland off the bench and you just need someone on the second side, if the first initial action with whomever the ball handler is and a big didn't materialize and you have to get it to DeAndre Hunter with like 7 on a shot clock, and the Knicks are maybe guarding him with Brunson or McBride or whomever, and he's got a clear height advantage, like him taking 3 dribbles and getting like to the free throw line and rising up. No, that's not an offense you're going to rely on, but that's probably like a 48% shot. And with like 4 on the shot clock, you're doing pretty well. So that's where his addition adds to the versatility of the offense, because I'm telling you, there's going to be like more times than you think where, I mean, you think about it from the Knicks perspective, how often is Josh Hart left with the ball in his hands having to make a play? Now, if you're Cleveland, if it's DeAndre Hunter versus like Isaac Okoro or Dean Wade, like that is a huge, huge advantage and upgrade. And the Knicks' size makes it easier for him to get to his spots and get a clean visual to the rim. Now, you can try to coax him into more of that, but it just seems to me at least, because that was sort of from the Knicks' perspective, my glass half full, thought was, well, yeah, DeAndre Hunter is a quality 3-point shooter, a good mid-range player, but I would love for him to take a ton of mid-range shots against the Knicks, despite Brunson's presence guarding him, because that's better than the other options on Cleveland. But watching him on this Cleveland team, I think this is the 4th game I've seen of him. I think it's all 4 I've watched. he just seems to know his positioning on the pecking order. And he is just seems very comfortable in that and knows the shots Cleveland wants to take and the shots that maybe he was allowed and empowered to take in Atlanta just won't fly here in Cleveland. But there will be times, like I said, late in the shot clocks or as the second side option where his ability to get to a decent look in the mid range is valuable and will be something they will like to have in the playoffs. And if it was Dean Wade or if it was Isaac Okoro, like you're in really good shape. But if it's DeAndre Hunter, like you still have to bear down for those last like 6 to 7 seconds to try to get a stop because he can get to a decent look. Thank you, Iceman Sham. All right, I think you got last one here for you. Got a lot of work to do this summer around the edges of this roster. True, and that is, the positive side of things is that this is not necessarily like a finished product. So there are still ways for this team to add to this group that maybe gives them, instead of right now, like 7.5 good players, like 8.5, like try to maybe 9, like however you're able to figure out a way to do that. Maybe you get some internal development from one of the rookies to be a clear rotation player. But having more depth on this team is like huge thing that they have to figure out. And you saw Huck Porty, I didn't think he distinguished himself that great tonight, at least, but I thought he played really well, obviously, against the Bulls. Got some Dadier minutes tonight as well, late. The game decided. 19-year-old rookie, I don't know if he's going to be ready next year. Kolek, same situation. We'd hope by next year, maybe he's like in your rotation. Maybe he is now like in the campaign role with more upside. So there's some internal players on the roster that you can maybe project to continue improving. And then maybe you bring in 1 or 2 players from the outside that can round out your rotation, extend it out a little bit, cut the minutes down a little bit. So that would be the hope. But yeah, there's got to be work to be done around the edges here for sure. Thank you, Iceman Shams. Matt G. What's up, Matt? In terms of roster building, Cavs have hit a few home runs and New York has hit a few doubles. Big difference. Let's think about this. So, the Mitchell situation, home run, obviously. The Strus signing, very, very good. Go back to, bringing in Jared Allen, obviously the Atkinson hiring, drafting Mobley. There's been some like really good moves that this front office has made. So I totally get that perspective. And I think there's been, if you look at where the Knicks are, obviously, like for going back to the Brunson signing, that's obviously a home run. So that would, maybe putting that one aside. I think the Towns one, it's a move I think you had to make. Is it a home run? No, it's not a home run yet because I think you have to win with him for it to be a home run based on not what you gave up, but what you're going to have to pay him over the next several seasons. The Bridges thing, obviously we know that's the asset haul was too great for it to be a home run, but I still think it's a positive. I think the Knicks I think it's fair to say the Knicks, other than, the Brunson signing, have hit more doubles than home runs, but all those doubles add up and they're in a great spot because they were consistent with that. And then Cleveland being a little more, hitting a few more, double home runs and triples there. Maybe. And I think the DeAndre Hunter trade looks like a great move for them. It's rare to get a player of his caliber before the trade deadline. So look, the Atkinson piece of it is huge though. And he's just transformed the roster in a way that's quite rare for a coach to be able to produce. He's, the empowering of Mobley, the relentless cutting and off-ball movement they have, the ability to really sell Donovan Mitchell on the fact that he's not going to take a back seat necessarily, but his role will be lessened a little bit for the greater good. Like that is not, as a new head coach, that's not a guaranteed situation that's going to be receptive by a superstar. So to be able to nail those things is just, it's been huge for them. And then just the record, it speaks for itself. Keep waiting for them to regress shooting the basketball. We keep waiting for them to go on a extended losing streak to try to make up some ground, but it just hasn't happened. And I just don't see it happening. Such a well-rounded roster right now. Strus, Mobley, Allen, Mitchell, Garland, Jerome, Hunter, Merrill, Wade, Okoro. I mean, how many is that? Is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10. That's a 10-man rotation. I mean, Isaac Okoro was starting for them in the playoffs 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure Dean Wade started for them in games last year in the playoffs. It's just, I know ESPN talked about it, but it is wild how deep the Cavaliers are and how the Knicks are just struggling to get to 8 players that can play. And credit to the Cavs. I mean, the roster building has been really impressive, and the coach he's been the perfect coach to meld it all together. Thank you, Matt G. Jibo, what's up? Thank you so much. Watch Clips and Bridges attack the rim much more in Brooklyn. Why does he only fade away here? He lost all of his aggression. Not saying that's why we lost. Yeah, it's not why we lost, but I do see that's been a sentiment out there, and I did acknowledge in the monologue that his lack of imprint on these games against these great teams is just unacceptable. And I don't know the rim pressure difference between now and what he's doing now and what he did in Brooklyn. I know he just ran more ball screen actions as the ball handler, so that's going to produce more attempts at the rim, even though he would probably settle for more short to mid-range jump shots than maybe you would think out of that action. But yeah, if you're gonna be your maybe not the primary ball handler, but if you're gonna run like a 8 to 10 pick and rolls a night, like 1 or 2 at least are gonna produce a paint touch, and that's going to allow him to maybe be more aggressive if he's getting downhill, and that's just part of the DNA and the fabric of his offensive role. It's not that right now. And the fadeaway stuff, I don't have a huge problem with it because he's been really effective with that shot this year. But there's just some nights where it's not there and it's not falling, and then what are the other options? Because the above the break 3 has just, I'm done assuming it's going to turn around. I think he's just going to be a very inconsistent above the break shooter this year. Maybe he can figure out a way to change his jump shot again to iron that out. But when you raise your release point, the physics of it all is going to tell you it's going to flatten your shot out. And that's from the corners. He can still manage to be a high efficient shooter. From the above the break area, How many are just short? It's almost every single shot that he misses is like extremely short, not just a little bit. It's not even close. So when he doesn't have that short fall away going and he's not getting out in transition, there's just and he needs to have someone setting him up from the corners, or Knicks will run some. They have a sideline out of bounds play where he'll come off a stagger, and it's there for him to get a touch, but it's going to produce like an 18-foot jump shot. He's made a fair share of them going to his right, where he's a really good shooter. So it's not like it's a bad option, but it's not. He's not generating free throws. His rim pressure is more of a problem, it seems, against these great defenses. But in terms of like the fadeaway jump shot, I think it's been effective enough to where I don't have an issue with him utilizing it. But there's just going to be nights like tonight where it's just not he's not getting to it enough, or it's just not falling with the right efficiency. Thank you, Jibo. Jesse Daniel, hope it's DJ on tonight. Need honesty about the team. Well, I mean, I think both Benji and John have been honest about the team many times before. So I think the perception is I'm maybe more brutally honest is because I've been on here for some brutal games. So at the Laker game, the Celtics game, the most recent one. So it's this one. So I think it's been sort of what's been asked, what's been needed, brutal honesty. So I think if it was Benji or John, they would be honest about this team. But I think you have to call it like it is right now in terms of like where they are in comparison to where we thought they were going to be and where these other teams are. It's a huge gap. And as I said earlier, it's hard to imagine right now like where the solutions lie. And maybe on Sunday, 1:00, we'll get some answers. Maybe we'll get a healthy Josh Hart, an OG Anunoby playing, and maybe we get a vision of where this team could get to. But that seems, at least right now, standing here, it seems hard to believe. Thank you, Jesse. Josso Focus, what's up? Thank you so much for hanging out with us after a tough loss. Can't shake this thought. If we are a championship level team, why are we repeatedly dominated by championship level teams? The answer is either we're not or limits of the coach. It's late early. Yeah, so that's sort of the theme of the show tonight, and that's where I started with it. So I agree with your sentiments, and I acknowledge that I am also thinking the same things. And that's why this team is just so, it's just a bizarre great team, because by all these measures, net rating, win totals, they're an excellent team. But it's their performance against these three teams that continue to sort of lower the ceiling enough to the point where you can't, it's acknowledging championship level with this particular group at this particular time just seems, it seems like you're doing it with some rose colored glasses, and it seems like you're not watching the actual games. You're not being truthful with where they clearly are. Be interested to see some of the post-game comments from the players. I'm sure, because they're going to take the lead from the captain. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of, we just have to be better. We have to, you know, do all the right things and play the right way. But I do wonder about the tone, the tenor of that locker room. So I can't imagine they aren't also feeling some of these same things. You can't average, like, in 6 games 126 to 105 and not feel like a 21-point gap. You can't experience that and not feel like you were just not in the league of these teams. So we'll see. I mean, we have the Sundays coming soon, Sunday at 1:00. Before you know, it'll be here, and then we'll get another good test. Thank you, Jeff. So focused. Appreciate that. Don Cappuccini. What's up, Dom? I was disappointed and embarrassed. I'm not sure why, since I've been waiting all season for them to prove to me they are title contenders, why others were already bought in. I guess they can hurt me too. Yeah, I mean, you've been solid on this. Like, show me. You wanted them to show you that they were legit. Like, legit. And you felt embarrassment and disappointment because you've been watching this team for years. Like, you're a true fan, and to see them, even if you have this correct assumption that they're just not at the level of these teams, to see them night after night just get run off the floor is brutal to watch. And I don't have an analog. I don't know when the last time I've watched a Knicks team that had championship goals be so outmatched. Like, during the Bulls years, MJ, like, you had the feeling they were outmatched, but it never felt like it was out of the question that they can compete with them. But it was only that team. Like, there were other teams that were in the ballpark, but it just always seemed like there was Knicks were a championship contender, and they would comport themselves against the best teams like a championship contender. This team, other than that, for 3 quarters in Oklahoma City, has just not done that against these great teams. So that's the part that is, to your point, Dom, disappointing and embarrassing. And there's so many, you don't lose in the way they're losing without there being major issues here at play. And we've talked about a lot of those over the last hour and change. If it was just one thing, if it was just the rotations, if it was just the lack of 3-point attempts, if it was just the pick and roll defense, if it was just, pick a topic, they would be in much better shape. But it is a host of problems. Some more impactful than others, but there's a lot that has to go right for this team to get to the level where talking about them with these other teams actually feels right, because right now it just feels wrong. And that's where we're at right now. Thanks, Dom. Juanon, how are you? Thanks so much for hanging out on a late Friday night after that loss. Why did this have to be the game I stayed awake for? I'm asking myself the same question right now. If there was any game for the Edibles to win and to wake up on the couch at 3 a.m., it was this one. Mitch better be Defensive Player of the Year or we're effed. # fire Tibbs. Listen, if anyone stayed home and took a few gummies and slept through this one, God bless you. Or you had better ideas, went out and enjoyed life, or went to T Squared and were able to commiserate amongst other Knicks fans, God bless you. This was a tough one to sit alone and stew over. Let's say that. Yeah, the Mitch thing. I've had to stop myself from being too optimistic about the potential impact because I thought last year even that he had gotten a little heavy. Was hoping he would get down to like the 2022, 2023 season weight. So maybe it seems like he's like heading in that direction. So a slimmer Mitch, maybe there's a little more, quickness. Thanks, Gav. He says he's at 266 now. I don't know what he was last year. I think he might have been north of 270. So he's definitely slimmer. I don't know if he's down to his 2023 weight, which I thought was around 250, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't really know how to get like the official like measurements on that because I find that those are always a little untrustworthy. But I'm curious to see how he looks with a more slimmed down physique, and I think his defensive impact can be real. But like I said, I have to stop myself because I've gotten burned by the Mitch stuff, and it's always been about the injury part of it, right? So, but it's just more fascinating this year because you have the Towns factor, and like how are they going to be deployed together? I'm sure we're going to see a lot of it. It's just how and when, and more importantly, how does it look? Thank you, Juanon. Appreciate it. Sam Garcia. What's up, Sam? Oof, we are not close to the best of the best. We are not. We are not close. And if anyone has any suggestions about how to get there, like what can be done for this Knicks team to get to the point where they are legitimately considered a championship level team? Because I have thought of that question for weeks now, and I can throw out some adjustments and ideas. And they all seem to be just a little light and a little almost unworthy of the intention here, which is to vault this team into this group, which they so clearly are not with right now. And that is more alarming, concerning than the actual losses. Where do they go and how do they fix it? That is the set it after Boston. It's the biggest question this team is facing right now. And after this game, it's still the biggest question, but it's become just a little less likely that they can figure it out. Like every time they go in against these great teams, and they are not able to compete with them, the odds that they are able to figure it out gets a little bit less likely. Thank you, Sam Garcia. I really appreciate it. Jihad Brown, what's up, Jihad Brown? How are you today? We played with no heart tonight, pun intended. Yeah, I mean, Josh Hart, he's the type of person that if there would be someone to sort of inject life into a group, it would be him. He wouldn't have made a marked difference in terms of the outcome of this game. But you do feel his lack of physicality and his ability to push the ball, create some rim pressure opportunities in transition, secondary playmaking, like really impactful stuff that you just don't have with him not being on the floor. And you don't have, really anyone that does the things that he does, in the package that he does it. So that's the part that makes his role on this team so indispensable because you can't replace the defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding. You can't replace the transition impact in a grab and go situation. And he's really like pretty clearly your second best playmaker. And whether it's Bridges or Anunoby or McBride, like Shamet, there's no one else that can do these things, that can run a pick and roll, that can make a play as a screener in the short roll. So you really feel his versatility absence more than anything. I think that's the part that is more, I think, more of a loss than his energy, than his sort of will to compete. I think it's just the versatility he provides on both ends of the floor, but really on the offensive end, because it puts more pressure on Brunson to create everything for everyone when he's not there. Thank you, Giad Brown. Appreciate that. Hopefully we get Josh Hart healthy on Sunday. Spicy Sham. What's up, Spicy Sham? Thanks for hanging out with us. It's all about defense, but we need more movement on offense. Standing around and watching ISO is not effective. 100% agree. And, you got to credit Cleveland in some way because their ability to switch everything. And they did this against Boston in their last matchup. And this is where their defense, I think, is really solid and can take you out of your actions, because when you switch everything and you're not allowing those advantages to be created off those either off ball or on ball screens, then there's just going to be a more stagnant look to your offense because, Brunson, especially early on, probably fell prey to trying to attack Mobley in isolation, which I don't think is going, you can do it. I don't mind him doing it in some ways and sometimes, but to do it time after time, I think is just not going to be a recipe for success, despite Brunson being one of the best isolation players in the league. I think Mobley is just too good, keeping him in front and forcing a contested shot. We saw Jared Allen against McBride, like completely shut his water off in an isolation possession. But it's switching in a way that it's as effective as Cleveland was able to do is going to bog down your offense. And there's certain things they can do to sort of combat that. I didn't see a lot of their like split cut actions that can confuse a switching defense. The screening under stuff where you set the screen low, you stay below the switch and then seal and try to get a run to the rim, either in the short roll or full roll to the basket. So there's certain things the Knicks can probably do better to counter a switching defense, but it's going to limit them in a pretty profound way. And that's why you see more cat post-ups. That's why you saw more Jalen isolation, because that's just if you want to avoid it in some ways, it's fine, but you're going to have to lean on that more often if the team is going to be as switch heavy as Cleveland was. So that is true on the offensive end, but I do agree about the defense being like the number one problem here. Thank you, Spicy Chem. Anthony Sixto. What's up, Anthony? Mikal needs to lean into contact. He has a size to create space, more free throws. Consistently drifts from contact before it happens. Mitch's defensive communication is underrated. A lot of little fixes go a long way. Yeah, I talked about the Mikal space creation stuff, generating more free throws. It's tough. I think it's his natural sort of shooting motion and the way he's able to generate space is going to lend itself to more kind of fading back, turnaround jump shots. And again, he's been effective at them. So I don't want to take that away from him. And, we're now how many 50 plus games into the season, like for him to all of a sudden be like an effective generator of free throws is probably not gonna happen. But you know, I'll try to pull up his free throw rate as I speak here. He was never a high volume free throw shooter, but it's gone in such a downward spiral that it's something has to be fixed there. I know it's like a lot. The main issue and what I talked about earlier is that he just has so many fewer on ball reps. And because he doesn't have the handle or the quickness to generate rim attempts out of isolation, he needs a ball screen to do that and to have a consistent sort of allowance of those ball screens is just not going to happen right now with the Knicks. So last year took 3.9 free throws a game, 82 games for Brooklyn. He's taking 1.1 this year. He took 6.6 in those 27 games after the trade with Brooklyn. But if you look at his Phoenix years, 1.4, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9. So, a little bit higher than what he is now, but not a huge difference. So you can see when he is in a more ancillary offensive role, like the free throws are just not going to be there. When he was given those on-ball reps in Brooklyn, especially that first 27 games when he was just allowed to go, his usage rate that year after the trade was 30, which is reserved for like all-star level players. So a 30 usage is why he had 6.6 free throws a night. That was cut down to 24 usage last year. Free throws went down with it, and then this year usage at 19, which is still much higher than his Phoenix year. So maybe his free throws are bigger if you look at it just based on the usage rate in comparison to his Phoenix years. Like it's really down. So, and then on Mitch's defensive communication, I 100% agree with that. He's the last couple of years gotten so good at calling out pick and roll coverages, aligning the defense, like being like a vocal leader as a defensive anchor has been a huge piece of it. He's just seeing the floor, seeing the actions in a slower manner. That's why his deflections and his steals have gotten much higher. At least got higher last year because he's just able to see things and he's able to react in a way to sort of sniff those plays out before they even materialize and uses great hand quickness to generate some deflections. So that'll be huge and be in stark contrast to what we're seeing right now with Karl-Anthony Towns trying to, defend as the team's defensive anchor. Anthony, thank you so much. All right. What do we have next? Saquads Barkley. Thank you, Saquads, for checking in. Compare Bridges and Hunter. Jerome makes it look so easy. So comparing Bridges and Hunter, so Bridges is, I think, a much more versatile and better defensive player than Hunter right now. Hunter is a good positional defender, but just doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the hip flexibility to guard smaller guards on the ball like Bridges does. And then on offense, right now, it's probably closer than I think most Knicks fans would like to admit it is because Hunter's become so good shooting the basketball. And I think that's right now where he's like bridged the gap a little bit, despite Bridges being, I think, a little better as a transition player, getting some, I think I have more confidence in Bridges as like an on-ball creator. But if Hunter is shooting, he's taken 6.5 threes a game this year, shooting 40%, many of which are above the break. Like, it's just a huge difference in the shooting right now. But overall, I think I would say Bridges is still the better player, but it's probably, pretty close. And then, Jerome with that floater, like it's one of the most lethal shots in the NBA. And he's become more aggressive, and again, Kenny Atkinson empowering him to be more aggressive with the ball has improved him as a player. Thank you, Saquads. And with that, we will be doing our timeout for, time for the Out of Town Scoreboard, presented by T-Square Social. Get a free draft beer when you tell them KFS sent you. Visit tsquaresocial.com to learn about club memberships, trivia, nights, sports leagues, and much more. So let's check out the Out of Town Scoreboard. I will be seeing this for the first time. I have not even looked at the scores around the NBA. So we'll get to the games in progress right now. Oklahoma City is currently leading the Jazz 80-62. Thunder looking for their 45th win of the season. Good one right now between the Rockets and Timberwolves. Rockets lead 72-71. 10 minutes left in the third quarter. Anthony Edwards, 25 points for the T-Wolves. Warriors up 64-48 over the Sacramento Kings. 21 points for DeMar DeRozan. Warriors, I think, looking a little spicy with Jimmy Butler, liking what I'm seeing so far. Bucks got another win, 104-101. So the Bucks get their 31st win of the season. Kyle Kuzma, like that trade for them, adding a little more size. He goes for 19 points. The Grizz pull out a 105-104 win over the Magic. I want to be looking forward to catching that game tomorrow. See how the Thunder or the Grizzlies are able to pull that one out. John Morant goes for 23. Franz Wagner, 25 for the Magic. The Heat in overtime, 120-111 over the Raptors. Tyler Hero, 28 points, coming off that 3-point shooting contest win. And our boy RJ Barrett, 29 for the Raptors. Back to Texas, the Dallas Mavericks, 111-103 over the New Orleans Pelicans. Kyrie Irving, despite a back injury that looks to be lingering throughout the year, goes for 35 points. And then finally, the Pistons, 125-110 over the Spurs. Keldon Johnson, 28 points for the Spurs, 21, 15, and 5 for Jalen Duren for the Pistons, who get their 30th win of the season. And that is your out-of-town scoreboard. And Andrew Claudio has
Hi, DJ.
the room. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Shout out to T Squared Social.
Yes.
I would like to tell everybody that the very next watch party we're going to do is not until March 15th. So you get a break, and maybe the Knicks have a couple weeks with a chance to win. In fact, we were supposed to have one next Friday against the Grizzlies, and we canceled it. So you're welcome, everybody, that we're not doing a T Squared watch party next.
So I won't be working that one.
You won't be. You won't.
Okay.
Be. You're relieved from having to do a post game after a blowout next Friday. But
Fair.
we'll be in touch about the Golden State game. On the 15th. I would like to do something fun with you if it's okay. I did this last night with Benji, and shout out to the fine folks at T Squared and to everybody that came and partook in trivia. So sometimes when you have plans, God laughs. So 7:00 start time made it a little difficult for people to get there. We had to push trivia to halftime. We were going to do an abbreviated version, but as you've been recapping throughout the night, there was no reason to watch the second half of the game. Shout out to our beloved head coach for putting out a white flag starting 5 in the second half. So we did trivia from halftime until basically the middle of the third, and then everybody went home. But we had a very successful night doing pregame trivia, and I'd like to play some trivia with you and the one and only Kevin, if it's possible. So, Kev, I'll get rid of the overlay. Kev Word's on the screen with us. So the two of you, if you want to get a pen and paper out,
let's do it.
I'll give you 60 seconds, and this is what you can expect the next time we do trivia, folks, at T-Squared Socials. You can come to a Knicks Film School watch party, partake. We had teams of 1. We had a team of 5 participate. They won tonight doing trivia. So the question that I'm going to ask you, name as many as 5 Knicks players that have made the All-NBA team 2 times. Now, that can be, it doesn't have to be, it has to be when they were members of the Knicks, when they made the All-NBA team. But yeah, they made the All-NBA team 2 times. Kev, are you typing?
Yeah.
You good? I was like, what is that?
I'm getting my list together.
Okay, we do. We're just gonna mute you in the meantime. It's okay. I was wondering what that was. Okay, so DJ, I'll let you go first. So here's what we'll do. I have a timer built in. To the thing. I think you gotta let it play for a minute. So here, it's a 60-second time. Say something.
My 5.
All right, say your 5.
All right, Patrick Ewing.
Hold on a second. Now say your 5. Go ahead.
Okay, Patrick Ewing.
That's 1. I should get the answer key up. Hold on a second. Patrick Ewing is correct.
Carmelo.
That is correct. He made it twice.
Willis.
Willis Reed is correct. Made it 5 times.
Bernard
King made it twice. Julius Randle made it twice. Well done. All 5. There's 9 total. How many more can you name?
Oh, jeez.
You got like 30 more seconds. So you would have nailed this, DJ, if you were a T-Squared tonight. Can I interest you in 1? Walt Clyde Frazier.
Oh, of course, Walt Clyde. Yeah. There's 9 more?
So
there's 9 total.
9 total. So that's 6. The other 3 are Richie Guerin.
Oh, it's always Richie Guerin.
Indeed. Harry Gallatin and Carl Braun. So these are some old.
Well, I should have gotten Clyde, but the other 3,
I
don't know if I would have gotten.
So the next one, I'll put the list up there for everybody to check out so they could see it. So this is literally the PowerPoint I used tonight. Then we will go to the next one. And Kevin, we'll just go back and forth. We won't do you guys writing it down. Just try to get as many as you can for the next one and just say them. So Kevin, we'll go to you first. The question, this is a scoreboard update. Never mind. The DJ's winning. Name as many as 5 Knicks opponents that have been eliminated by the Knicks in a 7-game series. So that's not a 3-game series for all you that remember when the playoffs had 3-game series. It's also not a 5-game series, but they've lost to the Knicks in a 7-game series. So there are a total of 11 possible answers. Let's see if you guys can get 5 in 60 seconds. Ready? Kev, we'll go to you first. Kev.
Indiana Pacers.
Indiana Pacers is correct. That's 1. DJ.
Oh, man. Pistons.
The Detroit Pistons, incorrect. Never lost to the Knicks in 7 games. Kevin. This is ever. Lakers. Good job. They lost twice in a 7-game series. 2 championships. DJ. Lost to the Knicks in a 7-game series. Did they play one last year, DJ?
Oh my God.
It didn't go 7.
It's the Pacers.
Best of 7, dude. But they lost to the Knicks in a 7-game.
Oh.
series. Who did they play in the first round last year?
Who did they play in the first round? The Sixers.
Yes, there you go. Okay, Kevin.
Cleveland Cavaliers.
For the win, the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's right. Okay, let's see if you guys can get the other 6. DJ.
Hawks.
The Atlanta Hawks. 3 different times the Knicks have beaten the Hawks. Go ahead, DJ.
Boston.
The Boston Celtics. They've beaten 3 times. Twice in the 60s, and then they beat them. The Carmelo team beat them. The Funeral series. where they wore black at like for Game 5 after J.R. Smith got suspended. That's correct. DJ.
I thought you meant in a Game 7.
No. So eliminated in a 7-game series. So I should say a best of 7 series. My apologies.
Okay.
A best of 7 series.
Hornets.
Hornets is correct. Well done, Kevin.
You said Hawks.
Mhm.
I don't remember the Raptors. I don't remember.
Raptors. So the Raptors actually beat the
5.
Knicks in 5, and then the year before lost to the Knicks in 3. So both of those series were 5 games.
It wasn't a 7.
So you guys said the Sixers, the Lakers, the Pacers, the Celtics, the Hawks, and the Hornets. There's the one recent one that you should have gotten is the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh,
you said the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I
I think
said
one of you said
Cleveland.
the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Miami Heat in the 2000 conference semis to get.
Oh,
to
I
the
thought that was
conference
still 5.
finals. So it's the semis. So the second
Chicago,
round.
Chicago
Yeah.
Bulls, right?
They beat the Chicago
Chicago
Bulls,
Bulls.
the infamous
Oh, in the 93
7-game
94.
series in 94. The Milwaukee Bucks, they beat a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1972, I believe, to get to the finals. I forget what year that was. And then the other one is the Baltimore/Capital Bullets.
Them.
We gave extra points if you got that right. So this is the scoreboard that we put up. There you go.
And Richie Guerin.
And Richie Guerin. Carl Braun is the answer to this one, too. All right. One more fun one, and then just say as many as you can, and then we'll get out of here. This is the Tibbs answer. Name as many as 5 Knicks players this century that have worn uniform number 3. Let's see if you can get how many you can get without 2 strikes. So, Kevin, you first.
Stephon Marbury.
Well done. Steph is good. That's one.
So this century is
since 2000. Since 2000.
Okay.
Who's wearing 3 for the Knicks now? Are you not good with uniform numbers?
I'm terrible. It's like my worst.
Oh no!
I literally have the worst.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. This is real. I'll be embarrassed on.
Oh, you're
on,
good. You're
KFS
good.
Airwaves.
You're good. This isn't. If you're not good at it, you're not good at it. It's okay.
I'm not. Who's number 3 on the Knicks right now?
Josh Hart.
Where's number 3?
There you go.
Yeah.
Kev,
All
you
right,
have
Kev.
you're gonna have to carry this one. It looks like.
All right, cool. Number 3. You said this, so John Starks doesn't count.
John Starks doesn't count. No.
Mm,
They traded for him, and I got really excited because he was one of my favorite players at one point, and then he was like clearly over the hill. But there was an argument between him and Kobe. At least I used to have it, even though he very clearly
Tracy
lost.
McGrady.
Tracy McGrady wore number 3. Then the Knicks drafted this other guy, but then traded him, and then he got re-signed with the Knicks.
Tim Hardaway.
Hey, Tim Hardaway Jr. And then traded him again.
You had to alley-oop that one.
Yeah,
I was able to finish it.
This other guy scored 47 points in a game once, I think. I think he scored 51 in a game once.
For the Knicks?
No. I don't think for the Knicks. I just don't know how many points the actual number for Brandon Jennings was.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Brandon
he did score
Jennings
50
scored
his
number
rookie year.
Wore 3.
Yeah. Then there's
That's
this.
right.
There's someone that signed with the Knicks during their last 54-win season when they were a 2 seed. He signed with the Knicks midway through, and it was like, oh, we got this one. We're. He used to play for the Nets, former number 1 pick.
Kenyon
Martin.
Kenyon Martin.
There you go. I'm just gonna put the answer key up there. So Tracy McGrady, Stephon Marbury, Sean Williams.
Shout
out to
I was super high on Sean Williams.
Shout out to his name is Sean. He came in second tonight. He and his buddy Jared came in second tonight at T Squared. And one of them put Sean Williams as one of the answers. And I wanted to give them 700 points for that answer. I didn't think anybody was going to remember that Sean Williams existed. Kenyon Martin, Jose Calderon, Brandon Jennings, Tim Hardaway Jr., Billy Garrett, Mo Harkless, Nerlens Noel, Josh Hart, and gone but not forgotten, Trevor Keels. He's alive, by the way. Was here for a very quick cup of coffee. So that was T Squared Knicks Film School Trivia. If you want to be part of it and have a chance to win a cool prize, we did first, second, and third prize for tonight. We'll be doing that again at the beginning of hopefully before and not for the entire second half of the watch party against the Golden State Warriors on the 15th. So be there or BT squared. I hope that lifted spirits a little bit tonight.
It did.
I know tonight
that was a needed end to the night. So I appreciate it.
There you go. All right.
It was not the best, but we got through it.
Well, good. That's probably what these games against top 3 teams are going to look like. It's not the best, but we'll get through it going forward. All righty, Kev, DJ, I'll let you guys continue.
All right.
Well, do we have super chats? Let's go right back to it. Jay, what's up, Jay? Do the Knicks need to be a Celtics style 3-point shooting team to win the chip, or can they do it another way? Listen, I don't think the Celtics way is the only way, because you could see how Oklahoma City is sort of like figured out a way to do it with a defensive sort of ethos. But I think the bigger question is like because the gap right now between like how many threes these top teams are taking and how many the Knicks are taking seems to be continually widening. Like, how do the Knicks bridge that and try to that gap? The gap can't be as wide as it is right now. So while I don't think the Knicks have to be where the Celtics are in terms of the 3-point shooting, they can't just be so out of balance right now, which is where they are at this moment. And the problem is they don't have a lot of high volume, great above the break 3-point shooters. They have some really elite 3-point shooters from the corners. Brunson and Cat are very good from above the break, but the volume is not elite, although Cat's 3-point volume has been ticking up lately. So hopefully that's a trend that continues. And then Brunson is just never going to be a super high volume 3-point shooter above the break because he's not being set up in a catch and shoot situation that often. And then the other part of it is he's not able to walk into those pull-up threes when teams are in drop coverage against him, because that you can't play drop against Cat and Brunson right now. They made that clear in November. So that's taken away some of those more comfortable pull-ups on the right wing, dribbling, with his right hand, gets the alignment and he can just step into it. Like that shot doesn't seem to be as readily available as the season has progressed. So they don't really have a way to boost their volume up to a point where it's on the level of Boston. But can you shrink the gap a little bit? That's where I think the team building part of it will have to come in during the offseason. Because I don't know, other than Cat maybe continuing this run of 3-point shooting attempts and Hart as a 3-point creator in transition. And then you can also just go to the McBride route and get him more minutes, but he's a catch and shoot 3-point shooter with a quick trigger and good range, so he can boost your volume up. But I don't know if he has the on-ball creation of his own 3-point shooting at a level that's going to be, what Derek White can do, or obviously Tatum and Brown and even Drew Holiday. So there's just a limit to how many threes the Knicks are, as presently constituted, are able to take. Thank you, Jay. Jay Vertical. What's up, Jay Vertical? Thank you so much for the super chat. Can you be a top 10 O&D with Mitch starting alongside Cat? You get bigger, and Mitch offensive rebounding gives you more scoring chances. Mikal OG would eat. This is why you made the trade. Play different ways. Let's go Knicks. So can you be a top 10 offense and defense with Mitch starting alongside Cat? It's a hell of a question. So I think you can maintain an offensive rate that keeps you in the top 10. Because to your point, what you're losing spacing and driving gaps for Cat, but you are gaining the best or second best offensive rebounder in the NBA. So that will improve things. So I think you can probably maintain a top 10 offense. Now, can you get to top 10 in defense is, I think, the bigger question. And I don't know the answer, obviously, to that. I think if you get Mitch at the level of what he was before the injury last year, I think it's a real possibility. Because I think it limits the damage Cat can cause a defense. And you really would have between Mitch, Mikal, and OG like three either borderline or at the level of like all defense. So I think that feels like you can maybe scratch your way to top 10 in both sides of the floor. And it's why I think the idea of playing Mitch alongside Cat is pretty enticing. And I also acknowledge that it feels enticing because we're seeing what it is without him on defense. So we're looking for solutions, and we know that Mitch might not be the best solution, but it is a potential solution, and we're desperate for something. Thank you, Jay Vertical. Appreciate it. Louis Studo. Thank you so much, Louis. At some point, Cat has to take some pride in his defense. His lack of effort the last 6 weeks has been awful. His offensive numbers are meaningless when he renders your defense completely unviable. So I don't know if it's an effort thing with him. I don't think you can be the best defensive rebounder in the NBA and not give like high levels of effort. Like I don't think it's an effort thing. I think it's a technique thing. I think it's a awareness thing. I think it's a agility thing side to side. Like when he gets going in a direction, it's really hard for him to stop and then reverse course. You know, in offense, he can just get downhill and he's so hard to deal with. But it's that ability to hit the gas and just go in a straight direction is one thing. But on defense, when he's having to react in multiple angles, he really struggles. And that's why I think it was Zach Lowe who talked a lot about like how Cat can have such great feet on offense but bad feet on defense. Well, I think it's like more to the point of like the requirement is so different on either end of the floor. So on defense, the change of direction piece of it is everything, especially when he's late getting to the screen. It's like if the screener creates that separation, he's having to catch up and sprint out to the screen. And then at that point, he is either overextended or in a poor stance, and then having to change direction, it gets really out of whack. So he has to, and it's something that I talked about on the most recent X's and O podcast with Benji. It's like he has to stay attached and he has to meet the screener at the screen. He can't be in catch-up mode and having to navigate in that way because he doesn't have the foot speed or the agility to be able to do that. So I think it's more of like the technique and he's usually in a poor stance and His hands are rarely like active and they're usually down. Like, but I don't think it's an effort thing. I just think he has some poor technical habits that render him like a really ineffective defender in screen and roll actions. But luckily he's a great defensive rebounder and like a decent help defender. So his floor as a defensive player is, I think, higher than maybe the conventional wisdom because he can do other things that allow that. I don't think he's a terrible defender overall. I think he's just bad at a really important thing, which is defending pick and rolls, which is a lot of what's needed of him. So it just doesn't feel like an effort problem. It feels like there's some physical liabilities and maybe just like processing issues, which is, if we're going to be honest, it's probably a worse scenario than if it was just an effort situation. But I think it's bigger than that. I think there's other things at play that it just makes it hard for him in those very specific defensive issues. Thank you, Lewis. All right, Andy McCabe. What's up, Andy? Precious should never shoot another jumper. OG is different this year defensively. Yeah, I mean, the Precious thing, the corner three from the left corner seems like it's a improved shot, but everywhere else it looks bad. Got the little left shoulder turn that has been a nice addition, but anything above the break is a non-starter for him. And the floater, which we saw like, I don't know, several times tonight, is just a inefficient shot unless he is just like right at the charge circle. But he's also like he's put in a position to where he's wide open, and it's just drilled into players like the need to shoot the ball when you're that wide open. So I understand him shooting in a lot of these situations, but he's also passive in the same regard, and that also like can really hamstring a defense. And then OG different defensively. Yeah, he really hasn't been the same defender on a game-to-game basis. There's been games where he has reached that level, but it has not been as consistent this season. And I guess the hope would be like he's gotten a little break here. Once he's, shakes the rust off and he gets his win back, he can have a little more, I don't know, verve to his game. Because I feel like the impact and like the game wrecking ability of his has just not shown up as much this year. And I think some of the impact metrics will actually, lend some credence to that. So I think there's hope for him, certainly. But I do think it's a true statement to say he has not been quite the same defensive player. And it's I shouldn't have to say it, but it's required of him to be that level for this defense to even have a shot to be able to stop teams. He's incredibly important for them. But thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. CC Kirby, what's up, CC? This bench really makes me yearn for the salad days of last year's bench of Burks going through his worst shooting slump in ages and hobbled. Old days. Yes, that's probably what the old days, not salad days. I thought I was missing like a reference there, but old days, yeah, it makes much more sense. Thanks, Kev. Yeah, and bogey and hobbled bogey. Yeah, those were, bogey would come in, hit a few jump shots, and you'd feel like there's something there as a shooter that was going to be sustainable. Never really got there, but had the threat of it, right? And great positional size. And Burks, never really found it, but it felt like he had it in him. It feels like Shamet as a scorer right now isn't there. But the point is, they need something else, and it was a shame that they weren't able to satisfy that in the trade market, and the buyout market doesn't seem like it's going to present anyone at a level that is you can say is going to be in your rotation, and that makes it tough because you don't really see where there's going to be more help on the way this season. Maybe there's in the playoffs, it's not going to be that big of issues. You're playing only 7, maybe 8, but you have to get there, and I think you have to feel good about your seeding. Now, maybe the thought is you're pretty much set at the 3rd seed here. I think Indiana is in 4, but they are right now 5 games back in the loss column. That's not insurmountable, but it's a pretty sizable lead with 55 games played or so. So it feels like the Knicks are in a pretty good spot. So maybe he can figure out a way to Tibbs, that is, to maybe expand the bench a little bit to get them some more burn. But yeah, there's not a lot of going on there. And Kev is putting in the chat, oh, it is salad days. It's an old term. The period when one is young and inexperienced. The war seemed to be ending, and so were my salad days. Interesting. I had never heard that before. Fascinating. Learning something. Makes me yearn for the salad days. That's incredible. Thank you, CC, and thanks for the education. Appreciate that. Jacksmaster 119. Woof. Yeah, I hear you. Rough one. Feels like you just want to turn the page, but also feels like we have to talk about the fact that this is now basically 6 games of getting destroyed by these teams that you are supposed to be competing with. So that matters, and that's why we have to dive into it, talk about it. Jacksmaster, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Bill Peterfriend, what's up, Bill? We gave Obi away, gave away Grimes, kept doing 2-for-1 trades, and now no picks. Rose screwed the depth and defensive intensity. Yeah, I mean, Obi just wasn't going to work here. And I could think the same thing could be said about Grimes. Grimes really didn't take to the fact that DiVincenzo outplayed him and took over the starting role last year. I think there is something to be said of the fact that he continues to just be moved around to team after team. So there's that piece of it. And, the 2-for-1 trades, there's been a lot of consolidation. So you're right about the fact that the depth has been compromised based on the fact that you have traded multiple players and pieces to try to raise your ceiling and improve the core of this team. And in doing so, really limited yourself to try to maintain or improve this team this season, because you don't have the assets and it's just hard. There's so much competition for these players that are really high level during the trade deadline, but the Knicks really weren't in on a lot of them. So maybe this next offseason, there's going to be more avenues for them to bring in more talent, and that lends some credence to the idea that they can improve this team, but it might have to wait to the offseason. But I don't necessarily agree that the Obi situation and the Grimes situation are evidence that this team made mistakes, because, you have to, the head coach is the head coach. You're going to have to give him players that he's going to play. Now, you can argue that the head coach is not the right head coach, and we can have that discussion, but right now he is. So you can't give him players he won't have confidence in playing. And I think Obi and, to a lesser degree, Grimes kind of fell into that group. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you checking in. Andrew Claudio. Andrew, just saw you. Now you're sending a super chat. How nice of you. Hey there, Knicks fans. A reminder that the next KFS watch party will be on 3/15, March 15th, versus the Golden State Warriors. Trivia beforehand. Be there or BT squared. And you got Andrew on here a few moments ago, giving you a little taste of the trivia on here. And I think it's definitely worth checking out. And it goes to show, when I locked up about the uniform number 3, then that, you put the pressure on someone, they can't compute. They can't actually get to the answers here. So whomever is winning these trivias, and Andrew was telling us there were some really impressive participants in this tonight's trivia. Really impressive job by them to do that with all the pressure on them. But yeah, check out the KFS watch party. Put it on your calendars. Less than a month away, March 15th, against the Golden State Warriors. Thank you, Andrew. Jason M. What's up, Jason? I'm annoyed by Mikal's lack of aggression, but he's leading the league in minutes. Maybe he is avoiding contact because he has to play so many minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we can never know, but it can't be overlooked because the minutes are real. The mileage that he is running is, if it's not first, it's second. So it's right up there. Yeah, I don't know how much it impacts the aggression part of it, but it to me, I'm not expecting him to be this rim pressure wing. What I'm expecting is to feel his presence more on the offensive end. I feel on the defensive end, more times than not, I'm coming away with feeling good about where he is. But there's just games on offense where you just want to feel that he is putting a stamp on the game. And maybe that's something the coach has to do a better job of trying to make sure occurs. Maybe the captain has to be more cognizant of the fact that Bridges is quiet in a lot of these important tone setting, like see where you are as a basketball team type games. He has not performed well against Boston, Oklahoma City, and Cleveland this year on a whole. So that needs to change, because as I said about an hour ago now, you're not getting elite offense from Towns or Brunson because of the way they're being played. So you need a real third option, not just one that is a third option in name only. Thank you, Jason. OG team again. What's going on? Thank you so much for sending this super chat. I just blame iHeart. It's how I cope. Yeah, it's hard not to think and wonder, like, what would it all be if he just said yes? Would Randall still be here? Would we basically, DiVincenzo I would imagine. Who knows? Maybe they make the Randall trade anyway. And then you have a Hartenstein Towns front court. But he's in a great spot. Can't turn down that money, but I also would have loved to see what it would have been here. OG team, thank you. Appreciate it. Kevin Danichevsky. What's up, Kevin? Emotionally divesting emotionally disinvesting. So for a team that certainly won't hurt me, the Mets. Tibbs a godsend for this organization, but skeptical he's maximizing this roster. Well, I said in the opener that is a fair way of holding him accountable, because a 3-year window closes quicker than you think. And you have to, as soon as this offseason, if this year doesn't turn out the way the front office envisioned, you have to go into that offseason. And the first question has to be, is he the right coach? And maybe it's an easy answer. Maybe it's a resounding yes. But I think it just has to, every year that they aren't in that championship tier, that has to be the question. And I didn't foresee like a guy like Kenny Atkinson completely changing the fabric of the Cavaliers. Like I didn't have the foresight to think that. So I can't stand here tonight and say that another coach won't have a similar impact, because I don't know. So that is something that the Knicks front office has to wrestle with. I'm sure they've already have a idea of where they may want to go. I don't think Tibbs is on the hot seat. I don't think his job is on the line per se, but I also think, as I said, 6 months ago, this is the most important year of his coaching life. The pressure is that great right now on him. And with pressure that great, I don't want to say you're on a year-to-year job, but it's not far from that. You only get Jalen Brunson's prime once. And that's it. It's over. And when it's over, it's over. And you have to be completely 1,000% confident that the pieces around him, including the head coach, are the right ones. And that's something that has to be part of the calculation. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Last one, Dom Cappuccini. Thank you, Dom. Town hall should be hell of a interesting. Yes, it will. To participate in the town hall, find our Patreon link in the show notes and become a Monroe tier subscriber, and you'll have access to our, I think, monthly town halls, where myself, John, Andrew, Benji, and then all the Monroe tier patrons will hop on, and we just kind of hang out for a couple hours. It's a good time. So I will see you on the next one, Dom, and to everyone else who joined today and hung out with us, thank you. This has been the KFS Postgame Show presented by BetUS. Thank you for tuning in. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel. We are close to 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. Help us get to 20,000 this NBA season, and leave a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this episode. Thank you, Kevin, for hanging out. Thank you, Andrew, for popping on for a few minutes. And thank you, everyone, for sending in the super chats and listening and watching along. We'll see you guys the next time, and hopefully I'll be doing this after a W. We'll see you again. Take care.